my face was in my notebook. We passed each other, didn't look. But these are the people of the towns, of the towns, the towns, of the towns. And large cities are just a bunch of big, small towns. Big, small towns. Overlapping side by side. Big, small towns. I see new people every day. Everyone's on their way, doing the things that fill their day. And I'm going places too, doing the things that I do with my time. We are the people of the towns, of the towns, the towns, of the towns. And large cities are just a bunch of big, small towns. Big, small towns. Diagonal, top to bottom. Big, small towns. Be nice to the people of the towns. Once in a while, look around. 'Cause what's going around's coming around. What came around's coming around. What's going around's coming around. Big, 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 small towns. Word gets around in the big, small towns. Big, 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 small towns. Word gets around in the big, small towns. Big, 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 small towns. Word gets around the big, small towns.
Hey everybody, welcome to Downballot. We do the show live every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Pacific right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. You can support this project. Go to echoplexmedia.com, click the support tab, and find your favorite way to support the show. I am producer Dave, and you can find me on Grindr.
And this is the Councilman. Glad to be with you here as always, producer Dave. You can find me on X at @THE_Councilman. You can also find me outside in my jockey shorts doing my gardening, because that's what I do. I actually invested in a nice tall fence this past year so that my neighbors wouldn't have to see me in my jockey shorts doing my gardening. And
but that's the way. That's why that one person moved into you, though. That next to you. That's what I heard.
Oh snap! What have you heard? I need to know. And who is this person? Anyway, but I'm really excited to be here this week. There is quite a bit going on in the local scene, not necessarily electoral related, but we're going to have some updates from the recent election tonight. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, and then looking forward to another exciting April. No fooling.
So, real quick programming note. What we're going to do next week, actually, is we're just going to do public comment from the jump so that the podcast listeners can get a little taste of public comment with the council in here.
That sounds good to me.
So we'll see. We'll figure out. We'll find something spicy to do. We'll maybe find something Bay Area, but a lot of times the shit here is kind of boring. So we may have to go Maricopa way or some.
Are we thinking live public comment or something we can have recorded? We could have clips from, because there'll be plenty of stuff to choose from.
I mean, when we do public comment, I just run a meeting.
Oh, hey, there we go. Okay. So that sounds good to me. I'm excited about this. So let's do it.
Hell yeah. So, but that's next week. This week we have a show that we've structured, and my lights are possessed. So what's going on with leading off?
Well, leading off this week, as we just mentioned, we're going to have some updates on some particularly close elections from the March 5th primary. And one of them was Prop 1, which is a statewide proposition related to a variety of things related to homelessness and mental health issues and the intersectionality of those things and reapportioning of county funds to handle those sorts of things, not the creation of a new tax, not the creation of any new revenue. So the measure was pretty well divided the whole state. It divided your panel here on Downballot with our votes, primarily because there was a lot of good things about it. There's a lot of not so great things about it. But it looks like it has passed. I was about to look up the final vote tally, but I can do that while we run this clip, which is Governor Gavin Newsom, who was a big proponent, probably the biggest leading cheerleader for this measure, pretty much staking a lot of his political future on it, talking about the next steps, and then also other advocates and other folks involved in the measure talking about what comes next now that it has passed.
This is, as was stated, an historic day. And that means little if we can't deliver now on the promise.
Governor Gavin Newsom taking a victory lap Thursday. Newsom was in Los Angeles celebrating the passage of Proposition 1, a voter-approved measure which he heavily campaigned for. Prop 1 will create strict guidelines on every county in the state to spend money on housing, drug treatment, and mental health services. Funding will come from an infusion of new bond money. The goal of Prop 1 is to stabilize and address the state's homelessness crisis.
It's a really big deal.
San Francisco Supervisor Raphael Mandelman also supported the measure, which he says will help the city immensely. He tells me after its passing, he and other city leaders spent Thursday morning in meetings discussing how soon San Francisco will be ready to implement the new law.
To figure out how to leverage these Prop 1 dollars, what our need is at different levels of care.
Changes won't happen overnight, though. Jim Wonderman of the Bay Area Council says it could take years for voters to see positive, substantial change.
Businesses to come back in, stores to reopen, economies to grow, jobs to be created, all of those things that go into, making for, successful communities.
However, not everyone is on board with the new measure. That includes James Birch of the Anti-Police Terror Project.
It's an attempt to warehouse these people. Warehouse people who are living on the streets right now by pressuring them into a diagnosis and then again forcing them into treatment.
Birch says, for one thing, he worries the new law will disproportionately impact people of color. He also tells me the proposition's passing is a major blow to advocates of voluntary mental health treatment.
All of the data, all of the experts are very clear that those treatments provide the best outcomes.
Well, the voters have spoken, and California will clearly be taking another approach. Now, as of last year, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development says the state has 28% of the nation's total homeless population, or about 182,000 people. And of those folks, over 2/3 are unhoused.
Those numbers, Tim, are really staggering, actually. But despite that, Proposition 1 passed with really just the slightest of margins, razor thin.
Statewide, yes, that is true. But it's a little different if you look at the Bay Area counties individually. Our three largest counties, San Francisco, Alameda, and Santa Clara, all passing Prop 1 with at least 10% of the vote. Dan?
Interesting. Okay, Tim, thank you.
With at least 10%? Do they mean like a 10-point margin? Even a 10-point margin?
Yeah, this is a pet peeve of mine in all journalism and local journalism, especially. They say both things, right? They make both mistakes. They say the margin as the amount when they should be, and then they say the amount as the margin. They won by 60% of the vote. No, they won with 60% of the vote. They won with 10% of the, no, they won by 10%. So the measure, it's about as close as you come with a statewide race. 27,000 votes looks like the final split, but that is out of some 6.5 million votes that were cast statewide. So when you think about it, it's about 0.4% that separated it. And so not insignificant, but certainly a state divided on this issue. And I certainly have my thoughts around conservatorship and requiring people to come indoors and accept shelter, or requiring people to accept mental health treatment, or just picking them up and putting them into treatment involuntarily. I tend to agree with the Anti-Police Terror Project speaker in the piece in that regard, but I'm also very cognizant of the fact that folks who did vote for the measure, that wasn't necessarily a key factor or even a big factor in their decision. There's a lot of other pieces to this measure, but that was one thing that's always I've just never really been a big fan of is involuntary anything, frankly, when it comes to housing or mental health.
What an abysmal turnout too for the state of California.
Very true. I mean, we're a state of almost 40 million people. Granted, only half of them are half of us are registered to vote. More than likely, that's about what the county, Santa Clara County, which is a pretty engaged county, I think you'd say. But only about half of us, if not less, I think like 46% are registered to vote in the first place. So it's great if 80 or 90% turn out, but that's only 80 or 90% of 46 or 50%, right? So, yeah, no matter what, even in a really good turnout election, you're still not really getting a full representation of the community. And there's a whole bunch of folks in the community who can't vote, and those are our undocumented residents, right? And people who have fallen out of the system and fallen through the cracks, who aren't voting and aren't engaged and are able to speak their own voice. And they are typically the folks who need government help and need government assistance and need government provided opportunities the most, right? And yet they don't have a voice. So there's been a lot of work at city levels and local levels to allow undocumented people to serve on boards and commissions and advisory bodies, but there's really no mechanism for them to have, and even to vote in like school board elections and local elections, but there's really no mechanism writ large for them to have a voice. That's unfortunate.
All right, well, we're going to move on to winners and losers. Where if there's a winner, it very likely was not who you were rooting for, though. I think this first story I don't know. The first story actually is the fucking winners and loseriest story that we've ever probably had. Looks like McDonald's mad about the minimum wage increase in California.
Yeah, we'll learn more.
Fast food workers are about to get a pay raise. Next week, the minimum wage goes up from $16 an hour to $20 an hour. But the restaurant operators say a higher wage could mean fewer workers. Here's NBC's Robert Honda.
Amir Samadi runs a popular round-table pizza shop in San Jose near the Oak Ridge Shopping Center. He considers himself a good employer through good times and bad. For example, Amir points out he did not lay off any workers during the pandemic or cut their hours. But now, as California gets ready to up the minimum wage for fast food workers from $16 to $20, Amir is not sure if he can afford that change.
As an owner or as an employer, you have to have coverage to pay them. If you cannot, you have to shut your door, or they're gonna lose the hours. Anyway, it's gonna be lose for both sides, either employer or employee.
Some have suggested the wage hike could be covered by raising prices, but Amir says passing the cost to customers is not as simple as it might sound.
You cannot just out of nowhere change the prices so people are gonna go elsewhere. There's a lot of options out there.
The new minimum wage applies only to designated fast food employees who work for places that sell food and drinks for immediate consumption, and applies to the bigger chains with at least 60 establishments nationwide. The South Bay Labor Council and many other labor organizations supported the change, calling it a job creator, not a job killer.
I think the data tells us that small businesses in particular save money by investing in their employees. You have to do less spending on training, less spending on advertising, and when someone just has one job, they're more focused on that job.
Some fast food workers we talked to, who asked not to appear on camera, say they worry about the impact on their employer, but also say they need the money to keep up with the Bay Area's cost of living. Customers we talked to at the roundtable say they sympathize with all sides: employers, employees, and customers.
Everywhere, everything's getting higher, so people need to make more money for that, and rent's getting higher, so I mean, it's understandable from both perspectives.
Yeah, because if the stores or shops raise their prices, you might not go out as much, right?
Exactly.
The new law also establishes a fast food council, which will monitor the change and see if there should be any more increases in the future. In San Jose, Robert Honda, NBC Bay Area News.
I know exactly on North First Street where Robert Honda was standing right there, by the way. I know exactly where he is.
That's good on you, man, because that looks like just anywhere San Jose or anywhere America to me.
That's at
but there are
North First, and I think it's Charcut or North First. It's north of it's like the next major intersection north of Brokaw Road on North First Street. between
maybe?
Montague and Brokaw. I know exactly where it is because one of our warehouses was like a 5-minute walk from there, and we've tried to avoid that subway, but we did end up eating there sometimes.
Well, good on you for avoiding it at least most of the time. And yeah, I mean, anywhere San Jose looks like. I mean, there's a lot of places in San Jose that look like anywhere America, which is actually why I think San Jose. By the way, just side note, film producers and production people, San Jose has places that look like anywhere in America. You want East Coast, Midwest, Northwest, South, Southwest. We've got locations in San Jose that fit all of those things. So come here and do your filming here and spend your money here. That being said, this is something where it's as the Labor Council pointed out, this is directly impacting major companies, McDonald's, major chain restaurants, right? These are companies that have for a very long time made their money on the backs of their employees, right? We're not talking about mom and pop restaurants. We're not talking about my family's restaurant, right? We're talking about these folks that have really cut corners for so long on supporting their employees, right? And paying their employees because it helps their profit margins, right? And that way, because they can then sell us the Big Mac or whatever for $2.99 when it really, honestly, costs a lot more, right? Like they should have been passing these costs on to customers for a long time. And if they had been, if writ large, these businesses had been doing that, we would be accustomed to that. And even now, if they were to say increase their prices, right? And they made it very clear up front. I've seen some businesses, local businesses do this a lot, but even some chains make it very upfront. They have signage in their business. They put it on their receipt. Hey, we are, yes, our prices have gone up. It's because we support our employees and we want to pay them better. We want to give them better. There's, I think one company, Ike's sandwiches. I'll shout them out here on Downballot. They even made a point of saying this is a surcharge we're putting on our product to provide healthcare insurance for our employees, which most fast food workers don't get. So if some are doing it proactively, this is a great thing that they're forcing these big companies to do it because, yeah, I might have to pay $1 more for a Big Mac, but I'll do it gladly knowing that these people behind the counter are getting at least a little bit more. It's still not a living wage, man. $20 an hour, do the math. Like you're still not be able to afford, the rent or God forbid home ownership in Silicon Valley. It's just not happening on $20 an hour, but at least it's a hell of a lot better than 16. 25% better.
And, I think the other thing that happens is maybe as you make these kinds of jobs more attractive to a wider variety of people, less people will basically say, well, that's just a job for kids. And so it'll be maybe easier in the future to get more gains for workers in this industry. If the wages go up and $20 an hour, you're right, you're not buying a house. But, if you were particularly frugal and lucky, you could certainly, split an apartment with a friend on that money. And that would be okay. Or if you're somebody with a partner and you have kids and you need to work with the job with not too terribly much responsibility. Now this looks pretty attractive to you if you want to work part-time or whatever,
Yeah. There were, the city council was considering, the first round of the budget process last week in San Jose. And there's a push in San Jose to have an ordinance to, protect fast food workers that sort of layers on top of this that would provide, training, know your rights trainings and helping them organize. Right. And, the restaurateurs came out against it, but there were literally hundreds of people who showed up, either on their own time who have like 2 or 3 of these jobs. Right. And probably at risk of retaliation from their employer to talk about what this means to them and what this would mean to them. And what this does mean. It was incredibly compelling. It's folks we've all known for a long time are being manipulated and misused and mistreated. So it's only painful to folks who haven't been treating their employees well this whole time. Like, for example, In-N-Out, okay? Whatever you think about In-N-Out, they're not going to be terribly pained by this. It impacts them directly. Obviously, they're a huge chain, but they're not going to be impacted as much because they already pay their employees close to $20 an hour, if I'm not mistaken, starting. So they're already in this. They're already doing all the things. So if you were proactive and you like our Labor Council rep, Gene said, if you're stepping up for your employees and investing in them, then you're going to do a lot better, and you're not going to have to stress these minor changes because you're already making them, right? You're already making that investment, and it saves you on training and all these costs, all the turnover, like you said, jobs for kids, right? That's how we think of it. So it's like a summer job, right? It's like a 3-month job, but that's how it's treated. People they get it because they need to make money, right? You need to DoorDash or do whatever it is, or go work at McDonald's. You do it to make a little money, and then you move on because you might find something bigger and better. But if it's something that can sustain you, maybe you'll stay in that job a couple extra months. Maybe you'll save the company money of having to train up someone new to do the work, because it's not like it's mindless work. Like this is stuff you need to be trained up to do. So even if it is as simple as quote unquote flipping burgers, right? No, it's a job. It's a job. You need to learn how to do it. So this has a lot of benefits. Invest in your employees. That's my final say.
All right, now we're going to move on to the saga of the Oakland police chief. A new police chief has been appointed, and there's some problems. Let's see what KTVU2 News has to say about that.
Let's start our newscast here with some of the breaking news we've been following for about the past hour or so. After more than a year-long vacancy, Oakland finally has a new permanent police chief.
Yeah, big surprise announcement here. We've been talking about this for a while now. The mayor announcing her choice to take the helm of the Oakland Police Department just within the last hour.
Okay, not for nothing, the guy on the right in this frame is like reading my mind. Look at him. He's like looking directly into the camera and reading the mind. Yeah, he's hypnotizing everybody. Sorry,
he's a professional.
I know. That's off topic. Whatever.
So,
KTV's show.
I'm apologizing to the audience, especially the people on the podcast that can't see
You're
him.
apologizing to our audience about being off topic? Come on now.
This is a big one. People have been waiting for a while for this one, guys. Oakland residents hinge on the edge of their seats for this. Mayor Shanktao just revealing in the last hour that Floyd Mitchell will be the city's next police chief. Mitchell was on the list of those 4 candidates recommended by the police commission to the mayor a few weeks ago. He has over 30 years of law enforcement experience under his belt. Mitchell previously served as police chief in Lubbock, Texas, among other cities. He left that job after his department was accused of not answering 911 calls. The mayor just revealed her pick on social media this morning.
Chief Mitchell is a strong leader and smart crime fighter who delivers results. His commitment to proven crime reduction strategies, including proactive policing and strong officer community engagement, vaulted him to the top of the list.
As you know, Oakland hasn't had a permanent chief since the mayor fired LaRon Armstrong over his alleged mishandling of police conduct. The mayor says now Mitchell will start as Oakland's next police chief sometime between late April and early May. Much more on this coming up on later editions of KTVU.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be talking about this. Joey.
So I'm actually unsure how much direct impact the police chief has on whether or not a 911 call is attended to.
I'm not either. It was just very interesting to me to in a situation where you would think, right, you would want the absolute most squeaky clean person, possible, right? Fitting the right demographics and qualities and values you're looking for, right? And you would want a clean process, smooth sailing, totally mundane, help a toast pick. And granted, this guy everything else sounded good until they brought up the fact that he left his previous job as police chief because of some sort of issue or controversy, right? Whatever it is, 911 calls, officer misconduct, whatever. It would seem to me that you would want to make sure you vet and and appoint someone who's just going to have no problems getting into the job, right? They're going to have enough problems once they're in the job. You want at least to have a smooth sailing of, getting this person into the job. And all this does is raise a question of was this the best candidate? Were there better candidates? Is there anyone who wants it? I mean, granted, is there anyone who really wants this job right now? I don't know.
As they say, the devil's in the details too. Was he forced out, or did he resign? He was like, I'm not getting the resources I need. And if you can't give me the resources to, deliver this performance where we, or deliver performance, if we can't perform when people call 911, I can't possibly preside over this. We don't know, right? And so maybe during the interview process, maybe that was the case, that he resigned and he wasn't forced out. But who knows? And the other thing is, with all the negative press about Oakland, I mean, maybe at some point you just take the best of the rest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I guess that's just my only point would be, I hope what you say is true. I hope there was vetting that happened, that that the local news, as we see all the time, is getting not the facts, but maybe the phrasing and semantics wrong here in terms of how he left his previous job. And it could be, even if he did leave of his own, of his own volition, or if he was forced out, it might not have been his fault, like you said, whatever happened, right? He may have been just the fall person for that, and had to fall in on his sword for that, for someone else. So, yeah, no, I wish him all the best. I wish them all the best. I think Oakland could use a win. I would much rather see them in winners, not losers.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And, there's also just something to be said for if he was like, yeah, we actually mismanaged that department. And from what I understand, the problem here in Oakland isn't necessarily that the 911 system itself is being mismanaged. It's a recruitment process. And here's a recruitment problem. And here are my recruitment numbers. I was able to get this, there could be any number. I'm writing fanfic about this guy, which is weird for me to do for a cop, but
yeah, cop. But no, actually, ironically, there have been, as we've covered here, issues with 911 in Oakland, right? With I don't think it was anything to do with not answering, but more just like who was answering or how, or the system went down, right? I seem to remember a couple of times. So I guess it's ironic that would be the thing that caused his departure from Lubbock.
It's like,
but hey,
our 911 shit's fucked up, and you're already used to dealing with that. Welcome to the job.
maybe that was what won him the job, right? In the interview, that might have been the selling point, the final selling point. Anyway, good luck to you, Chief. I wish you the best, and I hope you, can do something to improve morale and trust and community building in Oakland, because they could sure use it.
So up next, pickleball. We've been covering this story. My favorite part of the story so far is that, so real quick, there's a pickleball courts. They're community courts, possibly at a community center or a park. Pickleball is just like a loud version of ping pong / tennis. Apparently, the only reason I know it's loud is because people be complaining about it. And my favorite part of this story so far is that one of the people that was complaining about the public pickleball was so rich that they had their own private pickleball court in their fucking house, outside of their house.
And that that's part of the story, is that they're pissed that the city is competing with them with their own pickleball courts.
So here, we're going to get this from KPIX5. I love it when we keep following the dumbest stories. It's my favorite thing.
Well, it is a turf war. It's unfolding in San Francisco between Rec and Park and the pickleball community. At issue are 6 pickleball courts at Presidio Wall Playground in the Presidio Heights neighborhood.
Smart part of town.
Workers recently started painting over the courts. Pickleballers claim they're being shut out after complaints from neighbors. But as Kenny Choi shows us, they aren't giving up their courts without a fight.
1-0 start.
Pickleball has become Lisa Shaw's passion.
They love pickleball, and these courts are the ones they want to take away.
Once an avid tennis player, she's not relinquishing the courts without a fight.
It's really all about the community, and when you take away 6 courts from a very popular place, you're splitting up a community.
The Recreation and Parks Department recently put up signs saying tennis only, essentially shutting down 6 of the 12 pickleball courts. A Presidio Heights resident just across the street who owns a home listed for $29 million with a backyard pickleball court spearheaded an effort on change.org to shut down the public courts, complaining of noise impacting residents and wildlife.
It's the middle of the day. When you live next to a playground or a park, you should expect noise.
It is loud. No one's going to say that it's not, right?
Joe Grossman lives just down the street too. He and dozens of pickleballers are willfully ignoring the closure signs to make a stand.
I can hear it from my house, but I'm sure these guys hear it all the time, hear it a lot louder and all the time. And it does suck about the noise, but just because you don't like something, it doesn't mean you get to, complain about it. And then at the end of the day, get your way about it.
It was just dictated by Park and Rec that they were taking away our courts. So, of course, we went into an uproar.
Nearby residents understand the tension, including Katie Pyle, whose father plays pickleball.
He can hear the pickleball in the morning, and I know it kind of bugs him, but he loves to play pickleball.
Yeah, good.
That's reasonable.
Shaw says the players roll away their own nets each day and clear the space if a tennis player shows up with a reservation. But she believes by closing the courts, the city is kowtowing to a select group of wealthy residents.
They should just come out and try to play. They'd probably be a lot happier. Seriously, it's so good for your health. It's fun to be outside. It's a good excuse. People are
but they have their own private court.
And
Why would they play with the common people?
And I'm happy to give a lesson for free.
It's an act of kindness, but she won't be giving away any courts without a fight.
Go get it! All right, so we reached out to Holly Peterson, the homeowner who led the petition complaining about the noise and impact on wildlife. She did decline to comment. We also made multiple attempts asking for an on-camera interview with Rec and Parks Director Phil Ginsburg to explain this closure. His office only sent us this statement saying, quote, when a small residential park like Presidio Wall starts drawing 150 people on a weekend with all the accompanying noise, trash, and traffic, we have to adjust. So while removing 6 pickleball courts at Presidio, we will be adding them in other locations to balance opportunities to play pickleball with a responsibility to limit neighborhood headaches. The players tell us they've hired a lawyer. All right, up next.
Pickleballers known for not picking up their trash.
Yeah, right? Like, we're criminalizing pickleballers now? Like, it's not just enough to criminalize homeless people. We're going to, in the house, we're going to criminalize pickleballers, and you bring your trash and your traffic to our neighborhood. It's like, wait a second. I think we just talked to like 3 or 4 people in this movement who live in the neighborhood, right? So I'm guessing they didn't like get in their car to drive to the pickleball court. I'm guessing they walked to the pickleball court. So I don't know about this traffic issue and the trash issue. Like, what? They just mentioned that they roll up their nets and they clean up after themselves. So they must be talking about some rogue pickleballers who, drive in from, Marin or, the Sunset to play pickleball at the Presidio in Presidio Heights, just to piss off this lady who has her own pickleball court and started a change.org petition. And last thing, real quick, the Parks and Rec response. Can you be more bureaucratic? Can you be more of an asshole? Could you be more of like, I've got to go help funnel money to a nonprofit of a friend of mine so I can get indicted later? Like, callback, reference. Yeah. Oh my God. Can you be more tone deaf even? I'll be completely honest. I have not played pickleball. I have no interest in playing pickleball. It is loud and obnoxious and it annoys the shit out of me. And if it was happening right next door to my house, I don't know. I might not be a big fan of it. But you know what? If it was a park next to my house where that was happening, I don't really have much to say. It's a city park, right? I moved in next to a city park. Oh my God, there's noise happening at a city park during the day. Holy shit, right? I would accept it. I live across the street from a high school. Around lunchtime, guess what happens? Noise. There's fucking noise. There's kids playing and shouting and doing kids shit, right? And sometimes there's even kids coming over onto my side of the street. They sit on my curb and they eat their chips and they smoke their joints and their cigarette, their vapes, right? Oh my God, I'm so offended. No, I live across the street from a fucking high school. I accept that this is part of life, right? I don't understand these people who have $29 million homes next to a park. What do you expect, right? When you bought that $29 million home, did you be like, oh yeah, park, that's cool. I'm sure nobody goes to parks anymore.
They thought they were buying the park too, Councilman.
Right, that must have been it, right? And I don't get how they can have their own pickleball court. How can you righteously, organize a change.org petition and you have your own pickleball court? This is so sad and so downballot and just so perfect. I love this story.
I like how the lady was like, just come play with us.
Right? I'll give you a free lesson. She's implying that these people who have a pickleball court don't actually use it. I would not be surprised if that was the case. I bet maybe they paid $29 million for the home and could give two shits about the pickleball court. They just keep it up for when they have like people over.
Or so they can tell people they have a pickleball court and they're like, I've never heard of pickleball. What is that? They're like, I don't know, but it annoys me.
You should come over. We can play pickleball. I hate to give them British accents, but that's how I always picture rich people. Like Scrooge McDuck, Come on over. Posh. We can play pickleball and show them how.
Posh British people, of course.
Posh, of course. Come over and have a spot of pickleball. We'll have a cup of tea. And then later we can watch Game of Thrones.
All right. So up next, we got San Jose School is going to pilot a new plan to limit student cell phone usage. This is probably generally a pretty good idea, but I have a feeling they're going to just do this in a dumb way because this is local news. And even if it isn't that dumb, the local news is going to find a way to make it dumb. Let's see what's going on here.
So there's a box.
It's the norm in classrooms everywhere. Students pulling out their cell phones during class. But now teachers at James Lick High School in San Jose are hoping to change that with cell phone storage bins inside classrooms. Here's Damian Trujillo with the story you'll see only on NBC Bay Area.
Teachers here at James Lick want to emphasize that this is not a formal school policy, rather an understanding between them and the students that putting their cell phones away is best for everyone. Ask most kids and they'll tell you it's an absolute must. We're talking about that ever-present cell phone.
I believe that we do have an addiction.
Now, teachers at James Lick High School.
Thanks for taking a 2-second clip of her.
In class. Classrooms will now come with what teachers are calling storage bins, like this one. Students can place their cell phones in there while in class, or they can place them in their backpacks.
This is in no way a ban. It's in no way trying to take student phones. It's just trying to set an expectation across all 6 periods of a student's day that when they step into a classroom, they're there to learn.
Students will attend a school assembly next week to go over the cell phone expectations. It will be implemented as a pilot program during the last grading period of this year. And after working out any quirks, the full program will hit the ground running in the fall.
Maybe they'll even realize that putting their phone away for a short amount of time kind of will help with interpersonal relationships. Maybe they'll, have some conversations they wouldn't have had otherwise. Maybe they'll see their grades go up and feel more confident in their ability academically.
Parents were notified of the changes over the last few days.
Yeah, I'd rather stick with the idea, just leave it in the backpack, don't take them out, do your schoolwork.
I don't think that taking away the cell phone is going to help us.
We got permission from Fanny Trejo's guardian to talk to her. Fanny started a petition against the cell phone changes.
There's also many students who have mental issues, which is why they need their cell phone in case they need to call home or just even listen to music to relax.
Students would still be able to use cell phones in between classes and during lunch. Right now, posters are up all over campus with stats and warnings about the continuous cell phone use. Teachers say it's an effort to help students realize the dangers of never taking a cell phone break. Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
This actually, I mean, like the locker, the problem I see with the locker is I think kids are going to fuck with each other, take each other's phones,
lock them up.
Just fucking, I don't know. Or does the teacher have to distribute them at the end? Okay, whose is the Galaxy fucking whatever with the,
What they say, I mean, they made a point that it's voluntary, right? Like they have to put it in themselves. So, I mean, there's got to be some sort of library checkout kind of system, right? Where you punch a card or something. I don't know, to make sure you know who's who. But yeah, lots of luck. I struggle with this immensely now, more so than I used to, simply because I have a 20-month-old child who pretty regularly will grab mine or the good wife's phone and start messing around, tapping the screen. They realize all the things they can do, and she can open up search. She's opened up the camera and taken photos and video. She's opened up text and texted my boss. And this is before she was 20. This is like 11 months. This is before she was even a year old. So, and that's not because I'm sitting, and that's not because we're some sort of checked out parents either, too, right? Where we're just like, here, have my phone and get out of my face, child. I don't want to deal with you. No, we're incredibly checked in parents. We're constantly on top of her and monitoring her and making sure that, trying to do our best to make sure that she's not sitting there playing with our phones. But yeah, sometimes she just grabs the damn thing and runs off and does her thing, right? So I struggle with this a lot, just in terms of that. But then I also see, again, all these high schoolers across the street from my school or from my house. And, anyone who's been around teenagers lately, I'm not going to say it's a good or bad thing, right? I'm just going to say that kids are on their phones a lot and they are looking at their shit a lot. And I don't know if they're checked out of social relationships. I don't know if it makes it better or worse. I don't know that we have enough data really even to prove it yet or to say one way or the other yet. But, I guess I was raised at a time when we didn't have cell phones. At least when I was in high school, we had pagers. That was the biggest thing, right? I think you and I were around the same.
Remember pager
age.
code?
Yeah, of course. 143, and you could write boobs upside down, right? But yeah, pager code, things like that. That was what I grew up with, and there's just so much more exposure and at such an earlier age to all of these things. And there's something called a digital native now, right? Like the good wife, even she's only 5-6 years younger than me, and yet it's a completely different world, or she is on her phone quite a bit, and she does use her phone for so many more things than I ever really do and ever plan to. So it's a new world, but I'm not going to say it's good or bad. I don't want to judge it yet because I don't know if we know the facts yet. But it doesn't make me feel very good to see a bunch of kids walking around just sort of zoned out or looking like they're zoned out on their phones. Well, really, they may be having incredibly engaging conversations via text or via video chat, and maybe they're more comfortable having those conversations on their phones and in chat and text than they would be in person. And maybe it's helping them socialize better. I don't know. I don't know if anyone knows that yet. I do know this. They should not be on their phones in class, right? Unless it's something, diegetic to the lesson they're learning, right?
Right. I could see
their learning experience.
I could see the teacher saying, this is, something maybe counterintuitive or whatever. And the kids are like, oh, that's not true. And they go, great. You know what? You all actually have different versions of this. Take out your phone and look up this information. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Like, that's interesting, right? Because then you can use it as like a verification tool for a thing you're telling the kids that might be counterintuitive because they can get it then from an outside source. Right. But other than that, but that's like a rare instance, I think, where that would happen in a classroom. And I think that most teachers would avoid doing that because then it's encouraging. It would start to be disruptive then because the students would just be like some of the assholey students, the actually guys. Maybe they would grow up to be atheists, would then just be fact checking everything the fucking teacher told them all day long on the phone.
Yeah, but I think you always have to, as a teacher, I haven't, this is me, I've never been in the classroom, but from what I know of being a teacher and around a lot of teachers, my entire family is fucking teachers. You have to deal with that shit no matter what, right? You have to deal with the jackasses no matter what. That's just constant. And the better you can corral them and engage them, the better you're going to do in general. I would envision like it'd be kind of fun to do like a weekly or some sort of regular, hey, get out your fucking phones. Like, I know this, it sounds crazy. Get out your phones. I want you to get out your cell phones right now. And we're going to do a little research, using our phones. We're going to do some sort of learning lesson around the phones.
But for the research stuff too, don't they usually have like Chromebooks or tablets that are assigned by the school that they can do that kind of research on? But you could say, I'm specifically having you use your phone in this case because I want you to see that like there's some, something, the kids may be older or whatever. And hey, the school actually isn't really blocking important information about issues. And we're going to look up the same thing on your phone and on your school assigned tablet so you can see, maybe there's a rumor going around that your tablets are like heavily censored or what, I could see things with like older students where you're sort of doing it to be like, hey, your device gives you the same. But again, these are just like hypotheticals, and I'm writing fanfic about a teacher that would probably hate the idea that I have. Right.
There's also the equity issue, and what I probably didn't think of when I first brought up the idea of like having a phone moment. But there's also kids that don't have and can't have and can't afford like smartphones, right? They don't have their own phone. Students, so you want to make sure that anything you're doing is equitable and
maybe with
opportunity.
Maybe over time that ends up leveling the playing field in some way because the kid whose family can't afford the phone is actually paying attention in school. I don't know. Anyway, we got to move on to the next story. 2 reasons. 1, we have to move on, and 2, the video is long enough for me to sneak off to the bathroom and take a piss during the story.
Do that.
So this one is about a San Jose park, and the councilman on the docket put, this is why we can't have nice things.
You'll hear all about it.
It's back to the drawing board for plans to breathe new life into a historic park right in downtown San Jose. So the city has spent decades and millions of dollars on its vision to turn St. James Park into a major event venue. But it's also been battling the social club next door that's trying to preserve its own history. John Ramis has more on the new court ruling that put the years-long project now in limbo.
St. James Park sits right next to downtown San Jose, and city officials would love to have this become an amenity for all the new housing they want to build. But those plans are on hold as the park's future has run headfirst into its past.
It's extremely historic. The park has been around for hundreds of years.
But in recent times, St. James Park became a haven for drug sales and lately a hangout for homeless people. So on most days, it stays pretty quiet and empty.
It's an urban park that people are, outside of downtown, people are afraid to come here. And it has a horrible reputation.
Phil Maresca is part of an effort to change that. The city has spent 10 years and more than $4 million to develop a redesign of the park, and the centerpiece would be a new music venue called the Levitt Pavilion, San Jose.
Because that's the part that will bring people to this location.
With all the same fucking bands that have been playing in San Jose for the last 20 years, and then never mind. I have thoughts here that have nothing to do with this story.
A very regular basis, because in order to get help from a philanthropic developer called the Levitt Foundation, Maresca has committed to putting on at least 50 and possibly up to 300 free music shows per year, with the goal being to attract crowds of up to 5,000 people.
And this can become our living room. Can be where we come and meet our neighbors and hang out in our front yard and spend time with our community.
But the park is already somebody's front yard. Right across the street from the proposed pavilion is the St. Clair Club, a stately building constructed in 1892. And Sean Atkinson, the club's general manager, said they were alarmed to discover that the city's plans would disqualify the area from its historic designation.
It's destroying the historical district, and that's a problem for anybody that's sitting at a building as beautiful as ours. It wants to kind of still keep the district intact.
They also object to the size and frequency of the proposed concert venue and its futuristic look.
It just seemed very aggressive and destructive.
It does look like razor wire.
So
very San Jose.
The city in court and won.
The court said they broke their own laws. They broke their own historic ordinance. They told them you violated your own laws and you can redesign it and you could maybe even change your own ordinance, but you have to be ready for a challenge. You have to do it above board.
So now the plans are on hold as the city decides what to do about its own historic preservation law. And the park sits at a crossroads, whether to move forward to tomorrow or preserve what's left of yesterday.
In its ruling, the California Court of Appeals said San Jose could not approve its own permit for the redesign because the park is registered as a National Historic Site. So far, the legal battle over the city's plan has gone on for more than 4 years.
Yeah. So I mean, this boils down to. I mean, I know you have thoughts about Phil, so don't. I will let you. You should actually voice those because that's part of the reason I put this on the docket because I knew he was involved. But what the objections from the St. Clair Club and the local residents and even some of the residents of and the owners and developers of buildings and residences that surround the park that are supposed to be frequenting this space, it all boils down to just noise and people and drugs and all the things, right? Like that they think music concerts attract, right? Especially if they're free, God forbid. So there's just a lot of NIMBYism happening here on a variety of levels, but it's not as though the folks that are proposing the pavilion and working on it are necessarily doing it all in best interest of everyone either. I think they are. And they think they're doing the right thing, but it just seems like a lot to deal with. There's a lot of players in this, and I don't see how anything gets done anytime soon because it just seems like the whole situation is kind of stuck in limbo.
So Phil has been running the Sofa Street Fair for a very long time, and what is that? Sofa So White. It's all bands, no DJs. We were going to do a stage with DJs, and they ended up telling the media wench actually that she actually had to just book their bands after she went through the trouble of reaching out to the DJs, which was personally annoying to me because my name was on all of that because she was working in conjunction with me. But just also the events that he throws, they don't represent the diversity of art and music in the city. They represent the lack of diversity in the boys club around the Phil and Jimmy show. And that's not great. Great.
It's not necessarily healthy at all for the scene. And then, there's a lot of question as you raised, like during the clip of, it's on one side. Yeah, great. They're going to, in order to partner with this, what happened was I was actually very not involved, but very knowledgeable of the situation with this pavilion development. It's a national nonprofit that helps communities get started creating these venues, right? but they have to bear the branding of the national nonprofit, and they have to comply by certain, stipulations and requirements, and among them is, putting on a certain number of events and free events, right? So there's a lot of question of like, okay, how are these free events subsidized? Who's sponsoring them? Who's determining who play? Like you said, who's playing these events? What kind of music and genres and are getting represented? What kind of opportunities are there for local artists, right? And the diversity of our music scene here to be represented in these shows. There really weren't any specifics there, right? And there was really no talk in terms of, at this point, okay, you could build the thing, you could put on the shows, but how are you actually going to get the community? How are you going to get these 5,000 people to come out to these shows, right? What is the plan?
Hold on, 5,000 people at St. James Park.
Yeah, that's the thing up to, right? And I'm like, that. What's the plan for that? Like, I haven't seen 1,000 people in St. James Park, let alone 5,000.
1,000 people, you'd be like, fuck, where all these people come from? I don't know what you do with 5,000 people. That's like a small. It's the size of a small city block.
Yeah, no, it's a small. It's like a small amphitheater, basically. The idea with the redesign is that so right now, light rail runs pretty much smack dab down the middle of the park, or at least one of the light rail lines runs through the middle of the park, and it's 2 city blocks. The idea would be to shift all of the light rail over to First Street, and then for both the north and south lines, or onto one shared track. But to then unify the park and have one big continuous park that has a wraparound street, so there's no cut through. And then the pavilion would be in one corner, and they would just clear out a huge sort of amphitheater kind of style space that would accommodate up to 5,000 people standing or sitting or dancing or whatever they were thinking. So that's the concept. But it's like, okay, if you can get 1,000 people in there anyway, like even if you could fit them, period. I've never seen 1,000 people in St. James Park. So what's the plan for attracting them besides just putting on the show?
For a point of reference, I wasn't involved. When I talked the first time to the Silicon Valley Pride people, I said, "Oh yeah, I'm down to play. What does it look like as far as like attendance?" And they're like 2,500. And this is Silicon Valley Pride. I know they don't have all the money in the world, and they don't have the best venue, and they don't shut down the city like San Francisco does. But they were like pretty straight up. They're like, there's going to be max at any given time maybe 2,500 people at this event. And so I'm curious, like you are, about how they're going to get 5,000 people to go to even a free event, even with like a fairly well-known act, because now you're threading another needle, right? Can't have fucking Lady Gaga play there, right?
Not for free, right? You're going to have to pay. You have to pay these artists, right?
Just anything like so. I just know exactly what it would end up being. It would be like. It would be like music at the park, but like with a fancy pavilion. And it's just not great. It's just not great.
They wouldn't have to, from what I understand, they wouldn't have to get that kind of capacity like every show, right? But they would have to hit that to make the numbers that they're also like attendance numbers too. They need to prove to this group that comes in. Basically, this group comes in and helps subsidize the creation of the facility, right? But it's kind of like they get a stake in it in a way, even though it's kind of like a free community. They see it as a free community public benefit kind of a thing. It's like they get a stake in it in terms of the branding and the control over how it's operated.
So
that's weird.
Why the fuck are they not putting this at Discovery Meadow?
A fabulous question, producer Dave. Fabulous question.
There's
but
I've seen 5,000 people at Discovery Meadow before.
Yes. 100%
bike party at an illegal event, and everything was fine.
And that's where Pride mostly goes down to, right? As well.
No, it's like what's the name of that other park?
Cesar Chavez.
Yeah, Cesar Chavez Park, and the streets around it.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Going
up to like Meadow too.
Going up to like Market, it kind of like Post Street where the gay bars are. Kind of we walked up Post Street to get to the events, but
yes, I would say. Discovery Meadow though is the go-to place for this kind of thing.
Or like you said, Cesar Chavez, they've already got a stage there. Like what the fuck? Like what the fuck is this? Like this? This is the dumbest thing. Like I'm sorry, people who aren't from San Jose, like we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but this is what a dumb place to try to put this.
No, absolutely. And there's also been pushes, and you mentioned Cesar Chavez, which is perfect, great example. That stage is the hub, the main stage of San Jose Jazz, right? Like the biggest festival in this city. It's a destination festival nationwide every year, right? It's a big moneymaker. And that's their main stage spot. And there's no reason why we couldn't explore enhancing that spot and turning it into more of a venue, right? It's really not a venue right now. It's a concrete slab with some power out jacks, right? And they turn it into a venue every year. San Jose Jazz has been lobbying, and others downtown have been lobbying for a long time to invest in that space to make it more of a venue like this. And I don't know how they feel about the Levitt Pavilion, but I do know this: there's not a whole lot of crossover in terms of this Levitt. There's a local board that Phil is on that's promoting this Levitt Pavilion idea, right? I don't see a lot of crossover there with Jazz or with other local
they
promoters.
They don't get along with any other community organizations.
That's an issue.
Dude, you got to be a special kind of asshole to get the Bike Party organization to tell you to go fuck yourself. That's all I'm saying.
We can probably leave it at that.
Yeah.
We don't need. I don't want to necessarily make this the pile on these folks at Phil's show, but
I'm just saying.
Hey, I credit where credit's due, and debit where it's due too.
So we're going to move up next to Get Your Shit Together. And I think this is probably a Get Your Shit Together for the local Democratic Party and the California Democratic Party.
Ish.
Latinos lag in civic engagement, including voting, shows new study.
It's a monumental year for elections, what we just had on Super Tuesday and what's ahead this November. However, Latinos continue to lag behind when it comes to civic engagement.
Researchers at UC Berkeley and San Jose State say it's an issue that needs an immediate response. Here's NBC Bay Area's Damian Trujillo.
Researchers say it's not that Latinos are at home just sitting on their hands. There are many other factors limiting them from getting involved.
Well, thanks.
In this particular election, there's a lot of apathy as like, why should I vote if somebody else is?
The researchers from San Jose State and Cal laid out the hard truth. Too many Latinos are sitting on the political sideline. It's a headline that many community leaders are describing as both eye-opening and deeply troubling.
Due to distrust sometimes of the electoral process.
Latinos not only lag behind in voter turnout compared to other groups, the researchers say many Latinos don't get involved in neighborhood issues, let alone citywide concerns. The president of the Plata Arroyo Neighborhood Association, Danny Garza, has been ruffling feathers for years in a push to get more resources into his community. Listen to his take on the findings.
The research is an eye-opener, but it's not unexpected.
Researchers also offered some clear reasons why Latinos are sitting on the sidelines. They blame the spread of misinformation, distrust of the electoral process in Latino voters' home countries, infighting among Latino communities, and work.
We have to work. Work is the most important thing that takes up our time. So it's not that we don't want to be civically engaged, is that oftentimes we don't have time with everything that we're juggling.
Among the recommendations, get more Latinos into elected office, create a county-wide umbrella group where all Latino nonprofits gather with a common cause to address the issues as one. Encourage Latinos to register to vote, both with a social media campaign and with the grassroots door-to-door approach. And they say it has to start now.
It starts today. It starts by a group of us right now at a table, literally, before we have lunch. We're going to sit down and talk about how we can convene the next meeting immediately.
The Community Health Foundation, who commissioned the research, says they will take all the input they are gathering from the community, write a final report, and release it with a framework and formal recommendations in a couple months. In the meantime, Danny Garza says he might have to ruffle a few more feathers for his community.
Hell yeah, Danny Garza.
Oh man, I'm well hated.
Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
So that could have been a lot better. Although I don't think anybody thinks that people who aren't civically engaged are just sitting on their hands. I know that's like metaphorical, but I think people are well past knowing or well past believing that that's why that somebody's just too lazy to get involved in their community.
Yeah, I mean, I forget even being involved in your community, just the voting question, right? We're certainly beyond, at least in Santa Clara County in California, we're well beyond the laziness factor, because we make it so goddamn easy at this point. If you wanted to vote, right, it's really not that difficult, and it's not a time consuming thing, even frankly. If you're committed to doing it, you want to do it, it takes about 10 minutes, 5 minutes. So it's not about that. It's sitting on your hands. It's really, it is come down, I think, coming down to, and not just in the Latino community, but in immigrant communities in general, and in lower income communities and communities of color that have felt and are righteously feeling, disenfranchised and neglected. Yeah, they're right to distrust the system, because the system hasn't really done anything for them, right? So the distrust factor is huge. The lack of information, not necessarily lack of information at all, because they're getting more than likely they're getting mailers, or maybe they're getting flyers, or they're seeing social media, and they're seeing stuff about the campaigns and the elections, so they're aware that these things are happening. It's really just about getting compelling and what they can consider to be, reliable information from their own trusted sources about these elections, and especially about local elections. We talk about Downballot a lot. That Downballot is the name of this show. And it's one thing to be aware of, the presidential election, because that's all anyone hears about, Biden and Trump and all that mess. But you don't hear about, like we're going to hear about in a second, these Downballot races all that much. And that's why you end up with sort of not apathy, but just lack of awareness. And I think a lot of folks don't vote because they don't know enough, and they don't feel like they don't feel confident voting. They don't know what these people do, how they do it, and who any of them are. And they don't trust anything the candidates tell them, because the candidates are, they're like used car salesmen, right? And the political parties have their own interests, and all the special interests have their own interests. So no one's really looking out for what, in informing folks about what these folks actually do and how they would actually, what they would do for them, right? So yeah, they're right to, I think, feel like their vote doesn't matter, or that they can't make informed decisions, because they're just not given enough information to make informed decisions.
Yeah, like there's a lot of messaging that seems lacking. Like, I think like a good message for people, maybe if they're in the category you said where they don't think they have enough information, I think good messaging around that is, well, if there's an issue that you don't, you look up and you still don't know how to vote, just move on to the next issue. You can leave something blank on your ballot.
Blank, 100%. And I think, honestly, ranked choice voting could help with this too, in terms of letting people not have to make, that's the best person. Maybe it's 1, 2, 3, and that might help. That might help people. Some folks, organizers, think that would be harder to do, but to me, it's just getting them over the threshold of believing that their vote counts, right? And this next clip is going to really prove that it does. But everyone's vote does count, and you've got a very large contingent out there of folks who get the ballot, but that's all they get, because they haven't voted consistently. And what happens? We create this kind of doom loop where campaigns they have limited resources, right? So they try to focus on contacting and communicating with and mobilizing and enthusing, is that a word? And empowering and exciting a certain segment of the electorate, because those are the folks that vote consistently, right? They're consistent voters, every time voters. We call them 5 and 5s, 3 and 5s, 4 and 5s. That means how many elections out of the last 5 you voted in. But the 1s and the 2s we ignore, because they're just not as reliable. And so campaigns don't send them information. Political parties don't send them information. All they get is just the ballot in the mail and maybe the candidate statements, and that's it. And so we do this consistently over time. So they do lack information, because we cut them out of our process because they don't vote. It's a doom loop, right? The less they vote, the less they're going to get contacted. So we need to find ways to, not just in the context of a 6-month or a 3-month electoral campaign, like these groups are doing. We need to take a broader stance and a broader scope and a more holistic approach to how we engage voters outside of elections, to make sure that they're included in these conversations, and make sure that they start to turn out. Because if they start to, it's just like any other market, any other business. If they start to turn out to vote, they will be marketed to. They will get more information. They will be more engaged. It can be a virtuous cycle or a doom loop. We need to create a more virtuous cycle.
Yeah. I think I don't know what the solution is, but there's for people who are like, well, I'm not polling so well, I think the first thing you might want to do is be like, well, they're polling people who have voted before. Maybe I should buck the trend and try to find people who don't vote very often, see if I can get their vote. Like it's very who knows? Who knows?
It's fertile ground. It's absolutely. I've been to those doors. I've talked to those voters. It is absolutely fertile ground for any candidate who wants to reach out to folks who feel disenfranchised. The minute you come to their door, even as a volunteer for a candidate, not the candidate themselves, there's just this joy you can see in their face that someone gave a shit, enough of a shit to come to their house, right? Even if it is for a candidate or an election. Because you can tell no one's been there before. You can tell no one's talked to them about this before and bothered to knock on their door. And that's a really great feeling, and we should do more of it. You're absolutely right.
So up next, we're going to move to Downballot Watch, and our first story here is about the hotly contested race for second place in U.S. State's representative for the federal government, District 16. The top two go through to the runoff, and it looks like we don't know who the top two are. Let's see if the news thinks they know who the top two are.
One vote. That is the lead. Assemblymember Evan Lowe has over Supervisor Joe Simidian in the race to replace Congresswoman Anna Eshie. You can see Evan Lowe here with 30,211, 30,210 for Joe Simidian. One of those two is going to face former San Jose Mayor here, Sam Liccardo, in the general election come November. KTVU South Bay reporter Jesse Gary live tonight in San Jose with the very late one vote, Jesse, one vote. I mean, this is as close as it gets.
Well, or it could be a tie, Mike, and we'll talk about that in just a second. We have seen a tie in this county before, but for right now, one vote separating two men who are vying for second place in the 16th congressional district that stretches from Santa Clara and into San Mateo County. So they're collecting votes in both counties and having to tabulate. And as Mike said, one vote separating. We'll take a look at the numbers again. Sam Liccardo continues to be and is ensconced in first place with 21% of the vote and 38,432. Then Evan Lowe is now second with 30,211, and Joe Simidian is now second at 210, and that was flipped the other day. The county is growing short on time to certify these results so the election can proceed in November. Wednesday, the seemingly endless counting of ballots from the March primary, continuing at the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters. A slim margin separates Joe Simidian and Evan Lowe, with the second-place finisher advancing to the general election against Sam Liccardo in November. Have you ever seen a race this close before?
Yeah. In fact, in November of 2022, there was a race in Sunnyvale where it actually was a 1 or 2 vote difference.
After 2 recounts that year, the District 3 race remained tied between Jason Wong and Murali Srinivasan. The city election code called for pulling of lots to determine the winner. Election official David Carnahan put both names into a bag and pulled out the winner.
Well, I certainly wanted to make sure I only drew 1 envelope and not 2. That would have been embarrassing. But no, it's, as the elections official, it's an important part to resolve whatever needs to be done in an election. And so it was maybe a little bit nerve-wracking, but I was confident that we had a fair process.
As the process for certification of all ballots moves toward an April 2nd deadline, officials in both counties say for this election, like all others, it's always critical for those eligible to vote to do so.
Every vote matters, every vote counts. So even if someone will think, oh, my vote doesn't matter, it really does. It can come down to 1 or votes.
And once the votes are counted, then the ballots have to be certified by the California Secretary of State. And if there is a tie, as there was in Sunnyvale, then the tie would be broken by the California Secretary of State. And how would she do that? By drawing lots as they did in Sunnyvale. Again, right now, 1 vote separates Evan Lowe from Joe Simidian. That was the reverse just 24 hours ago. We'll have to see what the next 24 hours brings, but this is flip-flopping back and forth, and as in the Sunnyvale case, it's kind of the same thing, and then it ended in a tie. This could be headed for that as well.
Yeah,
We're live at the Registrar of Voters here in North.
Oh, it's a
I'm sorry, go ahead,
razor-thin margin right now. I know, Jesse, thank you.
You can't get any thinner.
No, you sure can't.
All right, we do.
So one thing that stood out to me there is I thought Liccardo was going to be ahead of them by more. I thought that he was, if I was going to guess, I would have guessed that he would have been closer to 30, not 21.
In the greater scheme of things, he actually, it's really significant if you look at the broader perspective of the race. There were 11 candidates, and a lot of them are clumped in the including Peter Dixon, who spent like ungodly amounts of money on his race. A lot of them are clumped in like the 6% range. And then Republican candidates in the low double digits. But far and away, Samitian and Lowe are far and away second and third place, and Liccardo by relative standards is actually blowing them out. Just because there's so many candidates and so many places to put your vote. 21% is actually, I figured 20% would be enough to get someone through to the runoff, and it looks like that will be the case, at least for whoever, and less than that for whoever gets through in second place. But yeah, it's typically of what you'd see. You'd think. I think he was in that neighborhood in the original polling because he had really high name ID, right, going into this. So, but he's in very, very good position and very strong position, and he stands to pick up quite a bit of vote from other candidates who were not successful. I think he will pick up quite a bit of the Republican vote, no matter who Lowe or Samitian get through, because they're both seen as much more progressive and Democratic Party oriented than Sam is, even though he is a Democrat. But he might pick up more of the Republican vote, so that'll be a strong suit for him and something he'll have to court. Yeah, that's it. This is just going on to show that every vote does count. The vote has now flipped again. As of today, Samitian is up by 2 votes out of so many hundreds of thousands. It's 30,234 to 30,232. But they are still counting what now are called curing ballots, where you either didn't sign or someone had the wrong signature on your ballot or it couldn't match up. So there's a question of whether or not it's your ballot. You have to send a form in to say, yes, this is my ballot. So right now they're basically counting only those ballots as they come in, as those forms and those affidavits come in. So you're only seeing like a handful of votes counted every day. And that's going to last for another week until they certify the election. Next Tuesday, I think, is the last date they can accept those. And then we'll see who's ahead or if it's tied or what's happening. But I guarantee you there's going to be at least one recount that one of these candidates is going to have to pay for, unless Gavin decides to extend some largesse from the state to pay for it. But it's that close. We're talking about it's going to be a handful of votes no matter what. But I would much rather be the person who's winning by a handful of votes at the end than the one who's not, because that person's probably going to end up paying for the recount.
Okay, well, that's it's. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens here. I obviously prefer Evan Lowe, but the more I looked into the other guy, I'm like, I'm not so mad about this anyway.
It's not going to be much of a in terms of like overall vote or whatever you want to call it, balance of power in the House. Not so much. It really comes down to representation in a lot of ways, and how they would represent the district and what they would bring home in terms of pork and that kind of thing, and who's supporting them. So. Yeah, it's a question of what kind of vision you see. And I would say Evan would probably be in office for quite a while longer than Joe. I don't know how long Joe wants to stay in public office, but Evan would have a much longer road ahead of him in terms of getting into a leadership position, right? Eventually being able to bring more home to California into the district because of that. So there's that potential too with a younger representative that I think can't be overlooked. I was out there curing ballots myself, though. I won't say for who, but I was out there knocking on doors and trying to make sure people submitted their affidavits, and you'd be surprised. Like folks, they had just voted. It was like that week they had just voted, and they couldn't remember who they voted for, if they voted for Congress at all. They forgot that they even submitted a ballot until they got this letter in the mail that said, "Hey, your ballot's got a problem." So yeah, the apathy extends even beyond, or not apathy, but the lack of information or the lack of whatever engagement. It extends well beyond even voting.
Right, it extends to the people who did vote.
To the people who did vote, yeah, that's sad. I met one kid who's 18 and just flat out said, like, "Yeah, I discussed that with my father." And that was it. That was his whole response about voting. Like, I discussed that with my father. We go over these things together. Okay, great.
All right. Well, let's move on. We actually got 3 more because I added a last minute story to end.
I saw that.
So we got Mayor Ed 209 is announcing his support for an affordable housing project policy that everybody else already supported anyway.
A lot of families in San Jose say rising rents are now threatening to price them out of their neighborhoods. Tonight, they're desperately hoping a new city housing policy will rescue them. Here's NBC's Robert Honda.
Affordable housing complexes, like this one being built in East San Jose, are a welcome sight for many working families living in the area. But sometimes no one in the immediate neighborhood actually gets to move in. A newly proposed city policy would change that. The Alum Rock Apartments is a 5-story affordable housing complex that will eventually house 60 families. Although the units are only for those earning less than half of the area median income, a proposed preferred tenant city ordinance would also require 20% of these units go to people already living in the neighborhood. Liza Gonzalez, a wife and mother, says she hopes to be one of those preferred tenants. She has spent her life running from Silicon Valley's rising rents.
Being a daughter of a single mother that used to work 2 jobs at fast food restaurants, we had to move literally every 2 years. So we were never able to call a place my permanent home.
Today, the mayor and community members rallied outside the Amigos de Guadalupe offices to make a last push for the program before Tuesday's city council vote.
When we ask a community to tax itself to build affordable housing, we ask them to accept new development in their community, more neighbors, more traffic. It's only right that that neighborhood benefits, which means that low-income residents in the neighborhood should have access to that affordable housing.
Mahan says affordable housing developers they've talked to are supportive since the rents are already deed restricted, so no one loses money. The ordinance would also set aside 15% of any affordable housing development for lower income applicants in that project's council district. Community organizers acknowledge even with preference, many will still have to keep looking.
We will continue to push for other forms of relief. We're looking at local preference. We're also looking at land banking, land trusts, community development corporations for people.
Liza says she's encouraged since she's been on a waiting list for years at another complex.
It's 1 or 2 persons were able to rent in that place. It was heartbreaking because of the process that is a system right now.
If the policy is approved on Tuesday, the city says it will quickly set up an online portal for people to find out if they qualify and how to apply. In San Jose, Robert Honda, NBC Bay Area News.
So the number was already 15%. It sounded like it was voluntary, right? That they were setting aside 15% for people already in the community. So they're just bumping that to 20% and making it city policy. Is that close enough?
Close enough. Yeah. I mean, there's what it is actually, it's sort of 2 different policies overlaid on top of each other. There is a policy already in place that a certain number of units be designated affordable in any complex, right? And if not, the developer pays an in lieu fee. So that is around, I think, 15%, I want to say, is the number of units. But then this overlays on top of that in an affordable housing complex or with affordable housing units, a certain percentage have to be set aside for like 20% or whatever it is for residents of that community, right? So it's just another layer to the affordable housing policies at the city level. And again, yeah, this is something that makes perfect sense. It's not, as they mentioned, developers are fine with it because it's not losing them any money, right? It's not losing the property managers any money. Because at the end of the day, they've got so many thousand applicants for these spots anyway. They're going to get them filled no matter what. So as long as they get them filled and someone's paying the rent, whatever the rent is.
Also, you're talking about thousands of applicants. That could be 10 times, more than 10 times the number of units. Would lead me to believe that they should be fast tracking building more, whatever this is. I don't know the exact designation for this, but it seems like this is a pretty important need that a lot of people are inclined to apply for.
Yeah, it'd be really great if the city put more money into building what this is called permanent supportive housing is really what it's called in the parlance of the housing industry, right? PSH. It would be really great if the city had a tax that we passed a couple years ago that was deliberately, designed to funnel into, land purchases and creation of and development of affordable housing. It's called Measure E. Hey, we did actually have it. We covered it here on Downballot. And it taxes, it's local business increment tax basically. But it's there to provide for this kind of housing and all sorts of housing at all tiers, right? From emergency housing all the way up to permanent supportive housing like we have here. And who would you think, what mayor would you think has been proposing for the last couple years to move money out of that fund to fund storage bin housing, basically?
Mayor Ed 209.
Yeah, ding. Hold on, where's my bell? Ding. I put the bell away for the time being. But yes, that's exactly who it is. So it strikes me as not only is he coming out here appropriating the Latino community that doesn't like him and probably didn't support him and probably wouldn't support him if they knew more about him, appropriating them for whatever it's for his own, self-aggrandizement, supporting a policy that everyone already unanimously supports, including the most conservative members of the council. The council's been demanding this actually for years because they've had egg on their face because they've approved affordable housing projects, like was mentioned, that haven't been housing people from the community. So it's absolutely no skin off his nose at all to go out here and promote this policy when he himself doesn't want to fund these projects. So what does he care if these projects have to benefit the local community if he's not offering to build them in the first place, right? Nothing doesn't harm him at all. So it's just a big political win. That's all it is, a big fart in the political wins.
But there's a bigger political win here that could be like, hey, the waiting list is long, and what I'm going to do now actually is, I've been trying to divert funding from this, but now that I think about it and I see just the number of people who want to live in this place that they haven't even seen yet, we're going to try to actually find ways to build as much of this as possible. It seems good for the community, and it would be nice. Yeah, no, he's just going to take credit for it. Fuck him.
Well, yeah, but that's because the thing is, not going to get that. Doing all that would be a lot of effort, and it would actually have to expend some resources and get something done, right? And that's not going to get him. It might get him the same level of win, but it's just he can get the same amount of win by just showing up at this rally, getting on TV once, talking about it, because everyone tomorrow is going to forget that us, the voters out in the world, right? They're going to forget that it happened. Just think, oh, he's doing something. Look, there's Mayor Matt. He's doing something. And our friends at Amigos de Guadalupe and in the community, they feel good because they got Matt to, conservative or whatever, Dino Matt Mahan, mayor at 209, to come to their event and speak with them and support their thing so that it can get it passed, right? It's a great policy. It should be passed. It was passed unanimously today. But he gets all those wins. He can get all that love and largesse without having to do much of anything. And that's, I will give him credit. I will give him and his team absolute credit for that. They know how to politic. They know politics, and they do politics really well. That's why he's the mayor. I don't have to like it, but that's exactly why he's the mayor, because he knows how to play this game.
So we're going to probably end up going a little past 9 p.m. tonight, but that's my fault because I had to add something at the end. But first, we got another thing.
Still getting put down.
We got another thing. We got Russian River Brewing Company, kind of a big deal here in the Bay Area. They do Pliny the Elder and they do Pliny the Younger, neither of which I like because they taste like soap. But a lot of like, you'd go when the Pliny the Elder would come out, you'd go to the neighborhood bar and they'd have it on the, they'd have it on the thing, and it's like an event for the local neighborhood bar. It's good for the people who like beer that tastes like soapy cilantro. Like, yeah, see,
like the councilman.
And so I guess this year, this Pliny the Younger, it almost didn't happen. Let's see what the news has to say about that.
It is that time again in the North Bay when craft beer lovers camp out in Santa Rosa for a taste of a cult favorite.
Yeah, Pliny the Younger from Russian River Brewing goes on sale tomorrow for a limited time.
But it didn't arrive there without a little bit of drama. Max Darrow tells us about the scare that threatened the 20th anniversary batch.
Each bottle that makes its way down this conveyor belt and gets stamped with this label will tell the story of Pliny the Younger. And this year's brew has quite the story.
This is a big moment.
Which is why Natalie Chilurzo smiled as she watched the bottling process unfold. Her team at the Russian River Brewing Company spends a ton of time preparing for the 2-week exclusive release of the Triple IPA. And there was a moment in January where disaster almost struck.
We did have a power outage during January, during the storms.
It lasted for a few days. While it didn't affect the beer going into these bottles,
we had just packaged our Pliny the Younger for distribution. So we had a warehouse cold box full of draft Pliny the Younger, and we were definitely stressing out about that.
Luckily, for Pliny's sake, Chilurzo says they were able to get a generator and they installed the switchgear as well.
Had we not been able to get that generator, we could have lost some younger.
That would have been a big disappointment for Pliny enthusiasts and for Russian River's bottom line.
Oh yeah.
Alec Miller says people camp out to get their hands on this beer.
A lot of times I'll close here the night before and I'll be closing up here at 10 o'clock and there's already people in line the next day waiting to camp out. I've had people from India before, people from Australia, New Zealand.
Over the 2-week period, they expect to see
anywhere from about 12 to 14,000. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of people.
For perspective, that's about half the population of the entire town of Windsor. As the bottles filled up, Chilurzo was busy tidying up this handout for guests with the information and story behind the beer. The label shows Mount Vesuvius erupting hops in bottles over the Russian River Brewing Company, a nod to the Roman history behind the character whose namesake the beer comes from.
So he was a well-respected author.
What started as a creative way to drum up some much-needed business 20 years ago has turned into an integral part of Russian River Brewing's story, one Chilurzo is quite proud of.
You know, it's a really big year for us, and the beer tastes amazing, so really happy about that.
And one that seems to be able to weather whatever comes its way.
So they got a generator.
Yeah, right. Like it's something I watched this story. I'm like, you didn't have a generator already? Like, what kind of fucking shop are you running here, brah?
Well, whatever. Like I said, a lot of my friends are going to be really happy about the this Russian River Brewing Company. But on another note, they make one hell of a porter. I've had one of their porters. It was very good, very, very chocolatey,
well, I know
and a little coffee, but not so sweet that it's gross. Oh, it was fucking wonderful. The only thing, it was a little boozy for my taste, but I just had one. It wasn't that I was worried I was going to get shit faced off of it. It's just like I can only take so much of like a boozy beer.
Lot. Yeah, I mean, in a triple IPA, I've had plenty of the younger. It's a lot to handle. So,
yeah. I mean, I'm not talking about that, but generally they do have like alcohol forward beer. It's all generally kind of boozy from that place. But
I got to respect that. At the end of the day, I don't drink to get drunk, but I do like when I only have to have one beer to get a buzz on. That's actually really nice. I don't like to drink a lot.
I just drink vodka.
Yeah, if you want to really get it going, do you have some special soup going on there tonight? Any drinks under the camera? I don't see.
No. I don't drink during the pod recordings, and I've been drinking a lot less on stream lately, but not zero. So
I'm done.
I figured I almost put this in winners and losers, and then I noticed the story in and another thing was about alcohol. So I figured we're going to do a story about weed. Everybody, they're going to attempt to cancel the Hippie Hill smokeout in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park this year on 420. And I do mean attempt.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some shit.
Event at Hippie Hill in Golden Gate Park appears to be off this year. Organizers said today they have not been able to secure the financial sponsorships necessary to hold the event. KTVU Henry Lee live tonight at the park in San Francisco with reaction. Henry.
Yeah, it all comes
down to
enough staffing and sponsors for a safe and clean event. So let's be blunt. You may want to think twice before coming to Hippie Hill. Time has now run.
I see what he did there. He said, let's be blunt. Get the fuck out of here.
The event's been canceled because there's not enough money to stage it safely at Hippie Hill in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park.
What?
That means no smokeouts or live music. But there will be some homegrown fun in the form of a volleyball and kickball tournament.
Fucking high.
San Francisco Rec and Park spokeswoman Tamara Barrick-Apperton says blame the budget for the buzzkill.
The city's in a budget crunch, so we just couldn't cover the extra staff times, the overtime rangers, the cleanup. So it was going to be more expensive.
More marijuana.
The organizer Alex Aquino says the event costs about $450,000 to $500,000 each year.
And unfortunately, with the cannabis industry so bad right now, we didn't have enough sponsorship support with the cannabis industry like we did in the past.
Here at Haight-Ashbury, the counterculture center of the city, many people say they'll still show up to smoke. The question is, how chaotic or not will it be? At Coffee Cantata on Haight, barista Chloe Nicholas says even if folks show up anyway, she might end up making less bobas and lattes.
As a avid pot smoker, I don't think that it'll be crazy. I just think that the city isn't going to be prepared for without having something organized.
Coffee shop owner Vaskin Farajian says with 420 falling this year on a Saturday, he still expects business to double.
Because we're getting a lot of people every day, especially Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a lot of people shopping around here. But on 420, we're still prepared.
They have fences up, it's all corporatized. It kind of deters even the tourism that the city...
Cody Qualos and others say 420 had become too regulated.
I would hope it goes back to what it was. I mean, but as far as it goes right now, like honestly, I've seen less and less people come in since they've had the fences.
It kind of takes away from the feeling of the freeness and the freedom that we have from 420, you know? Like 420 is usually gathering up stoners, potheads, and we're all just sitting there rejoicing the fact that we can smoke our weed.
You're doing good. You're doing good.
Now, organizers say 420 will
Man on the Street was pretty good this time.
They hope the event will be sustainable in the years to come. Live in San Francisco, Henry Lee, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
Yeah, I went long before there were fences and shit. There was just like fucking stoners everywhere. It was fucking cool, actually. Like there were fights and shit, but the fucking, you know, the crowd broke up the fights. Like,
as if like there aren't fights and shit that goes down at like organized events and concerts all the time, right? Yeah, like, I'm with Corey. This, like, get rid of all the corporate bullshit. Take down the fences. I don't understand this in the first place. Like, what event gets canceled? Like, people just, in my experience, just mob the park. Like, what are you doing?
Well, they're not even going to mob the park. They're just going to walk to the park.
Yeah. Well, I'm okay. Maybe mob was not the best choice of words there, but yeah, they're going to flock to the park and stroll or skip in some cases if they're already high and sit out and lay out in the sun and enjoy each other's company and smoke. Yeah, and enjoy the cannabis culture, which is exactly what happened before, and thousands of people came out and did it when it was quote unquote illegal. So it's not like that would change anything. So yeah, let the people smoke. It's going to happen anyway. So I'm not worried about it. It's just interesting that they have put on a $500,000 event to just let people get high and have fun. That's all you really need. And a drum circle. Who needs like Red Hot Chili Peppers and 311 reunion show? Like, let's just hang out.
Stealthy Fed agent to the chat, dedicated to the bit. He's like, I don't care as long as there's enough pigs there.
Right.
Oh, that was a fun show. We're running a little behind, but that's okay. Do you want to close out the show?
Absolutely. I'm real excited to hand it off to you in public comment, and I'm really even more excited about next week's public comment from the Git. That's going to be fun. You should definitely tune in and hear my choice comments about whatever public comment we happen to peruse. Thank you as always, Producer Dave, for joining me and for running the dials, and for you listener and you viewer. We appreciate both of you, and we hope that you're both back next week. We do this show every week at 7:30 p.m. Pacific, except when we don't, followed by public comment. You should, as always, get yourself vaccinated. Make sure you wear a mask in public situations just to be safe, and pants are completely optional. You can just let that shit hang out. We're going to play some Audible Smoke to take you into red light, and we hope you have a wonderful time tonight. Peace out. Have a great week.
Time to get the party started. Pick up my phone just to check and see who's calling. Dress up real nice for the ladies at the bar, and I'm driving in my car just to get to where they are. Here at the local scene is where I plant my feet. It's where I smoke my cigarette and I hold my drink. I look at all my friends, they're all blazing greens. Here at the front of the stage, waiting for MTV. Where are those guys who's standing next to me with a pipe in his hand, ready to blaze for me? About 5 minutes later, we're all singing Queen. Now get the fuck up on stage and rock the scene. Yeah, we do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. I turn and head back to the bar for a refill, man, because you know where we are. We're headed out to the car to smoke another one and another one. Now just when the magic starts kicking in, I hear relapse playing, you know it's time to head in. Alright everybody, now it's time to grab a new drink. Spark it if you got it and then pass it to me. Yeah, we do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want to do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. Last up on the bill for the show tonight is Down Me Dirty and 5, so we're headed outside. Let's spark up another joint now. Who's got my light? A stoner E, of course. Shouldn't you be inside? I'm all up in this bitch, being who I gotta be. I'm fucked up like the U.S. economy. The truth is that I don't think logically. Stoner E take you on a psychedelic odyssey. Now inside motherfuckers is rocking me, and outside shit we smoke a lot of broccoli. Rocky the rollie, all the sexy girl be jocking me. Ain't too drunk to fuck, but I'll probably do it sloppily. We do what we want to do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy the band. We do what we want to do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Molly say that he like jamming, and he hope he like jamming too. Well, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Yes, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Well, Bob Marley said that he like jamming, and he hope he like jamming too. Well, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Yes, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Yeah, we do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want, and what we wanna do, what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. We do what we want, what we wanna do, what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy